Myself, Muthukumaran Navnithakrishnan. I'm author of the liveProject online booking system with Spring Boot and ReactJS. So the idea there with the online booking system with Spring Boot and ReactJS is I would like to show you a small demo, and after that you can use this link and use my discount code TWITNAVA40. You'll get a considerable discount for that. So before going into our actual session, which is building reactive system, I would like to show you what does online booking system with Spring Boot and React.js does and what you would be building there. Okay, so you might be building a Spring Boot application for the booking system, which is a backend API. It would look something similar to this, or it would be similar to this. Okay, it was up and running. Okay, so this is just a demo. Okay, so we will do the building reactive thing or migrating the reactive application after this demo. This demo is for how the booking system is available as a live project there in Manning, and then how you would be building that. Okay, so yeah, so there'll be an API system where you might be starting there. Also, there might be one more thing, which is a UI stuff. This is what you would be building. You would be building a React.js based UI application as well as the backend with Spring Boot, and then this will connect with the backend, which is the booking system. You can choose any services, and then you can choose any slots, and then you can book any slot. I'm trying to book this one. And then you are supposed to provide all these billing details. So you will be building all this, okay, as part of our live project. And then be clicking make payment. Then it will ask for card information. This is also you would be building. You would be building like integrating Stripe APIs, which will communicate with the Stripe thing, and then you will build this payment gateway as well as part of your booking application. So I'm going to give this test card number, okay, and then any date, any future date, any 3-digit number, any 5-digit zip code. Okay, and then I can press pay. Our ticket has arrived. Okay, so this is what you would be building, the entire thing, whatever you have seen here. You would be building both the UI as well as the backend, and then you would be the one who is going to build for this QR code generation. Also, there is one more thing which you will build. 1 minute. Okay, so the final thing is after the ticket has been booked, actually, so the user is supposed to take this picture, which is the scan code. Also, he will go to this URL, the same React URL, which you are going to build as part of booking system. Stop localhost 3000. Have something like admin. Okay, it looks like, wait a minute, let me stop this video capture device for a second. It looks like it is not doing this because I have been accessing the camera here. I guess that might be the reason, I guess. Yeah, okay. So the idea is it will show the camera and then it will capture this barcode and then it will show the exact information of who the ticket was meant to. Okay, so we'll be building it, but unfortunately my camera has been used here in this OBS for streaming. I couldn't able to see this here. Okay, sorry for it, but this is what you will be building. Okay, so pretty cool stuff. You might have experience on building end to end, not just a back end, not just front end, the entire full stack. You'll be working with most of the best technologies which is available, and this is what we're building. Okay, so what I will do is I will explain. I think I have explained, right? You'll be learning these things. And then there is the code and you can connect it. There is a link actually in the description. You can go there and then there is a discount code. You can make use of it. Also, I have done this open source component. If you want, you are free to try that. What it will do is it will help you to draw charts, okay, based on some data. So you can scroll like this, all the stuff. It has a two-dimensional view. Whenever, if you have a two-dimensional data like category, subcategory, and winning in Hawaii, as well as what are all the counties which is available. This is just mock data, so I thought this can help. Actually, if you need it, you are free to use it. It is available in npm. Okay, so Angular Sunburst data chart. Okay, so all the things has been over. Now let's get into the actual project. It looks like pop-up blocker in the browser. Yeah, there is a pop-up blocker, but the issue there is my video is being streamed here with Twitch, and then it is also going to use the same video. So the device cannot access across multiple things. That's the reason. Okay. Or else I can just show that thing and it will work. So yeah. And then why reactive? Okay. So why do we need to build these reactive systems? So before going into that, we will see the benchmarks of Nginx versus Apache. Whenever there are concurrent connections, it would be almost similar if it is for the first 100. I think it might be 100, right? Yeah, it might be around 100 or 150. It might almost be similar. But once if we start getting multiple connections here, consider that it was 3500. Nginx performs much better than Apache. Okay. So I'm sure most people might have known Apache or Nginx. For those who are on here, Apache is a web server, and which is a common server, has been used across multiple enterprises and all the companies across the world. Even Tomcat has been a version of Apache. Nginx is another kind of server, uh, which is also getting popular. Okay? But if you can clearly see the difference, Nginx outperforms most of the time. But if you still see the market share, Apache has so much compared to Nginx. Okay, so this is the data which I think I got it from Riandal when he presented the Node.js presentation, Nginx versus Apache, and we will see one more stuff. And then the memory. Okay, so if you see the memory used in Nginx, it was unique. You can see that it was almost 2 MB, okay, across all the 3,500 connections. But if you are going to look into Apache, it keeps on increasing exponentially. Okay, so this is a thing with Apache and Nginx. And clearly, you can see Nginx outperforms Apache in most of the stuff, especially in concurrency as well as memory. Okay, so what is the difference? Apache uses one thread per connection. So if I am going to make a request, if I'm going to make a request like www.someexample.com, it will assign one particular thread, and then that thread is responsible for all the computation. And then once it has been back, it will give it back. Okay, so it will assign a single thread for the entire request. While Nginx doesn't use threads, it has threads in the background, but it doesn't use explicit threads per connection. It uses a concept called event loop technology. So it will assign a value whenever, if it is doing some other computation, for example, it is a database connection or file system reading for that particular request, it will just switch off. Okay, so threads are not assigned for each and every request. Rather, it will be based on purely on demand. So that's the reason, that's the main difference between that. If you would like to know more about that, there are multiple presentation related with event loop you can look into, but in this case I think this is enough. So Apache and Nginx are common flavors, while in Java we have flavors like Tomcat and Netty. Okay, so Tomcat is a server which operates in a typical Apache manner. It assigns one thread per request, while Netty is not. Netty is a event-driven thing. So these are all the same thing which I have shown you a couple of slides back. Only difference is we are verifying with Tomcat as well as Netty. Right. And then, so these event-driven programming paves the way for reactive programming. Okay, so whenever work is going to be coming, you just need to start doing it. So it was typically like, I'm sure most people would have heard from computer science background, like producer consumer problem. So these kind of things you have here, right? So it was similar here. It was just like publisher as well as subscriber. The publisher subscribes a subscription, and then the subscriber will keep on pushing the data, and it is called subscription. And then all you need to do is you can just put you can just wait for the data to be arriving, and then the data might be coming from next, as well as if there is an error, it might throw an error, and once it has been completed, it will throw complete. So I don't think I have explained it very briefly here. I'm sure there might be multiple people who can explain it much better than what I have done. But what I would like to say is, or I would like to say is, yeah. So there has been two things, which is publisher and subscriber. Publisher publishes data, and then the data might be coming with a method called next, and then the error might be thrown with the method error, and the completion of the publisher might be specified with complete, while the subscriber make a subscription of the publisher, and then it will keep on waiting. So the data will be keep on flowing to the subscriber. So the idea there is each and every process would be separate. So if you typically think in a regular programming level, you will be calling methods, right? You'll be calling like, okay, add this, subtract that, this, that. So there won't be direct method calling in terms of reactive programming. Rather, there would be publishers, and then you can subscribe for that result, and then you can do things what it was. Okay, so it was similar to observe pattern, which you might have here. Okay, so you just need to observe for something which is coming, and then you will keep on listening, and then based on that response data, whatever you are getting, you will process on it. So I just think that way. So if you look into functional programming is getting more popular, and then most languages, especially in Java 8, from Java 8, the functional programming phenomenon is a great thing there. It denotes each and everything is a pure function. Okay, so while our reactive programming is each and everything is either a publisher or a subscriber. Okay, so there would always be a stream of observer, and I am going to observe that data from it. Okay, so in order to use reactive programming, most of the reactor stuff is Spring Boot has reinvented more. Rather than the typical servlet stack, which uses Apache and all the stuff, they have created some other thing called a reactive stack. Okay, so it uses these reactive stream adapters rather than the servlet APIs, and then it uses a Netty rather than Tomcat. Okay, the previous servlet containers are yeah. So this is a reactor project. They have usually what the reactive programming relies on is there is a thing called RX. It was an organization. Let me open that. Let me try to open it. Okay, so most of the reactive programming is based on the Reactive X style. Okay, so they are the one to come up. They are the foundation which has for all the languages. So if you can see that they have Java, JS, .NET, Scala, Clojure, Swift. I think even they have for Go, Python, all the stuff, because I have seen that they are everywhere. So if you want to use reactive programming, you can just, if you are familiar with these operators which reactive programming is offering here, there are almost, I guess it was more than 100 operators apart from creating streams. And these operators are something similar. I'm sure most people would have from Java background or JavaScript background. You'll see like something map, filter, all the stuff. Apart from that, there are some cool stuff like switch map, and a switch map is like if there is any other asynchronous thing which you would like to transform. And there are multiple things. It was a huge stuff actually, to be honest. But we will see like a little bit about that in this session. Okay. So what Spring Reactor has done is they haven't used the entire RX Java as it is. Rather than they have made their own thing called Project Reactor, and all these things are based on Project Reactor. So they have something called Mono, Flux. These are also publishers, and it does follow all the Reactive X stuff, but also it supports something called back pressure. Back pressure is by default ReactiveX expects all the data should not be stopped. So the data, whenever the data is flowing there towards you, there should not be something like stopping. But think about that, if there is data flowing like 100 GB of data just like flowing it, there might be a possible like we might be crashing our VM and all the things, right? So they have this back pressure which is called flow control. Using that, you can say like, okay, fine, I need to have only this much data. I will take only n number of data. I cannot take more than that, so that you can play around. Okay, so that is the main difference for Project Reactor, and reactive stacks work in that way. Okay. And then for each and every library, they are dealing with a different thing, because in servlet stack you have some cute thing called JPA, JP has this repository, CRUD repository, and then joins. Most of the things you can do just like that. You don't have to. There is not like so much of work involved there. You can just do as it is. But here it was just evolving. Mongo has been pretty much decent, and they do offer much better stuff there. But there is no JDBC here. Instead, there is something called R2DBC. So this is for reactive database drivers, and they do have support for most of the DB, I guess, especially for Postgres. I could able to see it, but it was not as much stable and all the things what JP has been offering. Sorry, JDBC has been offering. So it was started working, but there are some way to go. Okay, so it's not like if you have joins, it is going to work and all the stuff. You need to write separately. The reason they want to go with R2DBC rather than JDBC is JDBC is a single transaction based stuff, while R2DBC is not like that. You can have multiple things. So that's the reason most people will feel like R2DBC will work better with NoSQL databases rather than the SQL, which has this ACID properties. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to migrate a Saloon app to Reactive. Okay, so the first step is we'll be migrating a Saloon app, which is the backend API, to Reactive, and the next step is we would be migrating the Saloon UI to Reactive. Okay, so there is Spring Boot. It would be a typical Spring Boot. We are going to migrate it Reactive, as well as there is a typical ReactJS. We are going to use Reactive there as well. Okay, so let's go one by one. Let me open the application. Okay, so also let me open the UI stuff. Okay, let me run this one. Okay, so this is the typical application, but I have not used the entire project there. Rather, I have used only just two part of it, so that it will work for this demo. Okay. So I have started the backend. Also, I'm starting the front end, which is React.js, while the Saloon API is Spring Boot based. Okay, so and I think it will open our URL. It was the same thing. Okay, so you need to choose the choose that service. I'm choosing this one, and then you need to choose a date for booking. I'm choosing this, and I'm asking to show slots, and then I need to book the slot. If I'm booking, it will say like slot booked successfully. Okay, so there is no payment gateway, there is no credit card details, there is no QR code or nothing. Rather, it was just a plain thing. Okay, so we have an option to choose what is the service you need, and then we need to choose on which date you need that particular service, and then you need to book it, and then it will say like, okay, fine, it has been booked. So what we are going to do is we are going to migrate these two things, Saloon API as well as UI, into reactive style. Okay. So that is what the intention here is. Okay. Let me open this one as well. So you can also, because I have seen that there are some steps required actually. So instead of me just directly going into the coding, I thought let me put that information here in the presentation as well. It could be useful. So the first step is you need to migrate from Gradle. Okay, so you know that JPA is not going to work, and then you don't want our typical Tomcat server. You want Netty. So in order to do that, you just need to remove these two things: starter data JPA you might using, and then starter web because you want to use our Netty. Okay, and then test. Okay, test is you are not going to use something you need to use specifically for a reactor and all this stuff, but I think it might be fine. And also you might need to use Postgres driver. Okay, where starter data JPA you might be doing. So in this case, we just need to convert these, remove these things to this. That is the idea here. So let me do one thing. I think I have this information with me. So let me just remove this starter, remove this one, remove this one. Runtime only we are supposed to remove. It is not there, so I will remove this. And data JPA, remove this. And test implementation, I will also remove this. And then let me paste it. Okay, so the same thing, whatever we have seen there. Okay, so we have this runtime Postgres. Sorry, we have this runtime Postgres, as well as this implementation and all the stuff. Okay, so that is the main thing which we have done, and then I think we are almost done with Gradle migration. We check. I missed something. No, things are good. Okay, so once we have done it, I need to update the Gradle project. So let me just reload it. Okay, and let's wait, because we are going to use certain stuff which is related with this R2BC and all other stuff. So it's better we'll wait for some time. Okay, and we'll go for the next step. The next step is application configuration migration. Okay, so since we are not going to use JDBC, we are going to use R2DBC. We might need to remove certain stuff which has been part of JDBC. Let me go here, our Salon API. Our application properties will be looking something like this. We have connection pool, data source, and all the stuff. Just delete this. Then I already have this information, so I don't want to type much in the configuration stuff. Let me type in actual code rather than that. Okay, so only these things. Now Postgres is there, and then R2DBC has been configured, or Gradle has been performing well. Okay, so the next thing is entity migration. So we do have these entity classes, right? If you see here, mostly in our JDBC stuff, you'll be having entity classes. In our case, I have an entity class here at something called slot.java. Also, they have one more entity class called Saloon Service Detail, which has entity. So in this case, entity migration is we need to remove this entity and generator. These are all so JPA specific. And then join annotation is not supported currently, so you might need to remove joins. You might need to after removing it, you might need to do one more thing. Like let me just do these things, and then we will come back there. I'm removing this one. Then I will remove generated value. ID is there. Before that, just remove this import. Then for ID, you can just put an import and ask Spring Boot. Sorry, yeah, Spring Boot to give something for us. So Salon service detail entity has been migrated now. And slot.java, the same thing. Remove the persistence inputs, remove the entity, remove the generated value, then remove these joins because joins is not going to work. We need this as well. Going to work. Let this be there. So we know that we have removed certain joins, but in order to use our application, we might need to have these joins, or at least we need to have these columns, and then we can utilize it effectively, right? So instead of the joined object Salon service detail, we know that the particular column exists as selected service ID. You can ask like how I know this. I get it from our PG admin. You open it later, but the idea there is there is no object. There is no object for available service. There is no object for selected service. So just apply this thing, like make that service as an ID and then specify which column it is referring to. And then we are good to go. In this case, I specify at column. Then what's the name of that column? It's browser. Okay, so the column name is selected service ID. This is what the join is for. So I just need to put selected service ID here. And see that I don't have any other thing apart from value. Let me put the value as well for the sake of clarity. It will work actually because it's the default, but still missing it. And then this is we don't need this, so I'll just put something called transient. So whenever if you are making a variable as transient, it will never look into database. Okay. If you want, you can set the value, but it is not going to look into the database. Okay. That is what it is. And I think we are done, right? Yeah. So this is not Salon service detail, rather it was a long selected service ID. So in our case, we have removed the join columns, remove the join annotations, and then we have removed the objects which is related to that. Rather, we have just used the typical things. Okay. So the entity migration is done, and then if there is any enum, we might need to migrate it to integer. Okay. Do we have any enum? Yeah, we have an enum here. Okay. This is the enum. So instead of this value, I might need to put it integer. We put integer here, and then I will create a getter setter for it. Okay. What I would be trying to do is what I'm going to do is I will just change this value here, but since I have the getters and setters, I will still have this slot status value as it is. Okay, so this dot status equal to, and if you would like to get the value, there is a thing called ordinal, give you the value, and then if you'd like to get the status, slot status, something like slot status dot values of status, the text, right, 0 1 and then using that you will get the value. So we have converted this value into integer, but the enum is still available and make use of it. Down. Okay, so I think we have done with entity migration here. And then the next thing is a repository migration. We do have repository, right? These repository needs to be migrated. That is our first. We'll go for Saloon Service Detail repository. This repository here, because repository is not going to work as JPA repository here. We might need to something for reactive. So reactive has a option called reactive CRUD repository. So it was similar to what our JPA is provide, but it was reactive, which means it is not going to work on one particular thread to do the transaction and all the stuff. Okay, so reactive CRUD repository is will do the same thing almost. Don't have much. Then one more thing to do is you need to let me do the other thing as well, and then we will come back to these dot repository. I will this JPA, remove this one, need this because already been extending it. Okay, so I have done that, and then we might need to remove something which is related with the joins. If you see here, it was related with Saloon Service Detail. We might need to remove it, or I'll just comment it out as of now. Then we'll come back later. And then it will say something like, whenever if you have something related with object or enum, you might need to replace it. I will say like instead of slot status, I'll put integer slot status. Use it like an integer rather than that. These are all the stuff which is required because currently the R2BC drivers doesn't support all the stuff. You can do that, but you might need to do it separately as extending a repository class and a repository interface, implementing repository interface, and then doing it. So for the sake, we are doing something like that. Okay, so one more thing across our reactive programming style is whenever in the repository, if it is going to return a single object, you might need to change that to mono of object. Mono is similar like a single object, like similar to optional actually. Okay, so it might have a value, it might have one value, or it might have no, no values. While flux is something, it might have no value or it might have list of values, which means it might the values might be keep on flowing. So there is no list here because everything is reactive. There is no list here. There is only mono or flux. Mono is either 0 or 1, while flux is 0 or n. Okay, so multiple stuff. So you might need to convert your queries like that. So if you have optional, convert this to, okay, then import that one. Then if you have optional, convert this to mono. Here is an optional, convert this to. Okay, so since and then what we are going to show up is service migration. Okay, so service migration transactions are not supported, so you might need to remove the transaction annotations. And then the database the data types should be similar to mono and flex. Okay, go for each and every service. Here it is find all. Find all is not going to return list. Whenever it is list, it is always flux. Okay, so that to flux, and then whenever it is optional, it is going to be that into mono. Okay, we have done here, and then we will go for the other service. remove transactional, removing it. Then list should be moved into flux, move that, import it, come back here. I think we might need to come back here, back later. And optional, it's going to be mono. And if it is a single object, it is again okay. So everything should be in reactive should be with mono. So there is nothing like direct object is coming inside. Yeah. I think we have migrated services, I guess. But need to do one more thing. Uh, the queries, right? So the queries which we have here, for example, we have something here in get slot service on date, right? So we might need to do something for it. So what can we do here? So find all by slot greater than equal and slot, these kind of things will not work here as we are passing local date and local time. So the first thing we need to find is uh, there is no saloon service detail. Just have this ID, which is slot service ID. So, and this slot service ID is available in slot. If you see here, we have selected service ID. This ID is available here. And what we can do is we can write a query related with join, and then we can make use of it inside. Then we can just call it. I'm sure most people have been aware of like how to use SQL queries. So what we are going to do is we are going to write an SQL query in the report. It's going to be something like this. Well, let me be commenting it. P is going to return flux of slot. It will be like find available slots for service. Since I'm going to write a custom query here, I don't want to worry about like what is the syntax and all the stuff. I can just give whatever name which I like. Long service detail ID. Okay, so this is what if you want to use it a native query, just use something called query which is available, and then write the query inside. Select star from slot because we need all the slots, but where is but the selector service ID is something which we will be getting it from where is it? Available services. Okay, so slot available service is the one which will give us all the values. Start from slot where ID in. Okay, so the ID is the one which is the slot, and then inside we have a subquery select slot ID. Okay, so yeah. Slot ID from slot available services where available underscore services underscore ID. ID equal to this parameter, right? So parameter which we are receiving. So it will return the list of available slots for that particular service, but without date. Okay, it's going to comment it out. This we will use this one. We are not going to use start date and date, but also we are not going to use saloon service detail. We will use slot service ID. Going to return flux it's not going to be the same thing which we used to have certain time back. One thing here is we haven't added anything called start date ended, right? So we can use a similar thing, filter, which is available for every flags. Filter, and then this is similar to the filter which we'll be using in our functional programming. Slot for is after start date and slot for is before end date. We got this one. We don't need this. Okay. So I think we are almost done with this. Okay. So and then we have this issue fix. Okay. So in this case, what we have been doing is we are trying to find out the slot is available or not. Then based on the availability, we are utilizing something. We are trying to find the slot ID and then slot status is available. Instead of this, we do one thing. Don't need this because and then there is no selected service ID now. Set selected service ID is not get Salon service. Okay, we need to retrieve the slot which is available, and then whenever if the slot is available, I just need to specify like, okay, fine, I need to book it. Okay. So there is a repository dot find by ID and status. So the ID is dot get slot ID, and then the status is slot status dot available dot ordinal. Okay, so if I have this value, what I need to do is I need to update this value. Okay, so because if you see here, it's not going to give me something like slot. It will give something like mono of slot, right? So this is what it is going to give me. So how can I update this mono of slot, right? This is what you would be thinking of. How can I get that? There is options like you can call then many and then you can do that. But my thing or a better way I believe is something we'll just have some return here and put a flat map. Flat map will take value and then put it back. Okay, so things are good. Flat map, what it will do is a map will just return the same type of value. For example, a map will get the slot and then you can transform it into some other string or some other object and all the stuff. But if you are looking to something called save will return a mono again. Okay, so whenever if something is going to return a mono or flex again, it is better to use flat map. So it will re-emit again as mono. Okay, so as simple as that. Okay, I think we have done right. Yeah, I think something services we have done, and then we need to migrate controllers. So the controller is similar. We just need to update our so-called object as it is. In our case, we have list use flex, right? And then we have list flex, then optional mono, and direct object. So that's it. I think we have almost done that, right? Yeah, I think we have almost done it. So let's restart our application and then let's run our UI to ensure things are working fine without any issues. So we have converted our typical Spring Boot application into reactive now. So you can see like what is there reactive. It's just like you have converted everything into mono and then Flux and all the stuff. Yes, it is not reactive compared to it. But the idea there is how to migrate things from one to other. Before that, I'm sure that there might be issues coming up. So we will just see like whether if it is going to work fine or if it is going to throw errors. We will fix one by one. Okay, looks like application started without any error. Okay, so let me go to the UI. It will it doesn't care actually. If you see here, it doesn't care whether it is reactive or something. It will just call the same API, and then the same APIs we have just updated for your information. Okay, so things are fine. You can see that our uh, yeah, our things are retrieving things, and then let's book something. This then ask it for 17th. See whether get that. Yeah, we have got that, and then let me book it, and then start book successfully. Fine. Okay, so application is running and then working fine in reactive. We have just transformed our entire Spring Boot, typical Spring Boot into reactive by just adapting these 4 to 5 rules. Okay. Controller migration, transactional removing, and then repository migration, entity migration, Gradle migration. Okay, so there are n number of stuff. There are multiple stuffs available there in reactive reactor way of Spring. Uh, I haven't covered all the stuff. You can look into that. For example, there is dynamically mapping. As of now, we are specifying everything static, right? The idea here is everything still works. So that is what I would like to share. Everything still works. With some little tweaking, your application can be just moved into reactive. It's not just the application which we have creating here. Whatever application which you have already been doing, you can just move it into reactive by adapting certain level work. Like, okay, fine, I need to update so much of issues. Yes, there might be so much of issues, especially if you are having so much of joins and all other stuff. But apart from that, comparatively okay, not much bad. So this is working fine, and then we are good here. Now our next thing is we need to migrate our Saloon UI to reactive. This is the next step. So before going into Saloon UI, you open it. Have it right. Already have it. You already have it, and it's there. Let's see. We have ArcJS. Yes, we have ArcJS inside. Something special. This is already available. Okay, so if you look into this React.js stuff, it was the older way. So choose slot is the first one. Okay, so work on this. Uh, Slot. Okay, sorry. Choose service is the first one. Choose service is the first one. We will work on this. So if we look into this one, it is a older way. The first step into adapting reactive is it needs to be functional. Only if it is functional, we can have an option to move it into reactive, which will do things good. If it is not going to be functional, it is going to cause, we can do it, but it will not look as good as possible. It will look like same thing what we have done it in Java, right? It was object oriented, and then we are trying to adapt reactive inside. It doesn't look like so much of reactive rather than having Flux, Mono, and all the stuff. There are options which we might have it in a separate session or something, but the idea there is to adapt a reactor framework here, im- implement reactive web style. But in JavaScript, that's a different thing. You can use on your own. You can have functional components in React. So the first step is we will create functional components. Okay, do one thing. We see this is export default with router to service. And stuff. I need choose service, right? So I will do one thing, just something like export default function service. Okay, so and then let me comment it out. Then I need this return statement, which is a good thing. So statement along with I'll just put a return there. Okay, so if you look into the return statement, it has something called items. Okay, so I need to have this value as state. What I will do is I will create a state object in hooks. Like always use always use square brackets. It was array kind of stuff. So items comma set items, which is for updating it, and then by default it was okay. Default it was empty. So it is not going to have anything else first. And then let's see what's happening. So the items constructor, all the stuff has been done. A component did mount. Component did mount in our hooks is nothing but use effect. Use effect should use download services. What I'll do is declare use effect here, use effect, and then let that have a function, then a dependency of nothing, and then I need to just use the download services, right? Where is download services? Let's cut it. I'll just put it here in the user. Okay, fine. So this is done, and what are the other things which I need to do? Book for. Okay, so this is not going to work. I just need book for stuff. I need to have a method called book for. Okay. I'll just copy something what the existing book doing. Okay, do I have any other things left? I have completed this one. Okay, so there is something called on receive data. Then there is something called on error, which we might be using from this one, on receive data on error. So let me put this function inside. Function on receive data, function on error. Okay, so this dot is not required because we are using this one. Let me call set items. Items has been set. Able to retrieve, and then loading indicator dot show when application is starting. And I think we have converted into functional as of now. I guess one thing is pending. This dot props dot history. Okay, so this history object will be retrieved only if we have the with router stuff, right? See here, there is something called with router. Only then you can use that history. But fortunately, we do have use history hook. Okay, we can put that. Let me do one thing. Const history equal to history. In order to use history, I need to do one more thing. I need to just import that from reactor.dom. Where is reactor? Here, history. It here because I might need to update the value there. And then history is available, and I'll just call history.push to slot item ID and stuff. See whether do we have an error. Yes, we have an error. We don't use class anymore. Okay, we don't have an error. Everything looks good. Let's try running the application. Okay, the one which I have modified is the first page. I've got an error. The sources on error is not defined because you will see that this dot on received data. Okay, so let's this is because we are moving into functional, there is no object oriented. Okay, so things are working fine. We have just modified our class level component to functional level component, but assume that still we have not utilized anything called reactive. Right? So just like we have just moved our so-called functional component into class level component, but we haven't moved into reactive mode. These are all the typical stuff. We haven't moved into reactive programming style. So how can we do that? Okay, so see. So the purpose of reactive programming typically is you should not call anything explicitly. Rather, you need to listen. Are we calling anything? Yes, we are calling here on click event and book for all the stuff. This has been called. Then we have any other thing? I don't think so. We just have on click event. It's been called. Okay, and then there's one more thing which is fetch. Okay, fetch is something which is inbuilt in our browser, but our reactive extensions has something called Ajax, which has a cancelable things as well. So let us just convert the switch into Ajax. Okay, that be a first thing, and then we will do all other remaining stuff. Purpose of this switch is it will get the data and then it will throw error if something happens wrong. Any other stuff. Let me use Ajax. Okay, Ajax is a function dot get JSON. Then the URL is we have this URL, and then what else? So we might need to we'll see what we are doing it on received. We are just setting the items there, right? We are not doing any other stuff. We are just setting the items. Also, we are hiding the indicator. So add a pipe. Pipe is something which reactive works on pipes. Okay, so pipe is something like after this particular event, start putting these information. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to intercept something. Okay, so because loading indicator has been showing, I want to hide the indicator. So I'll call something called tap. Then let me have a value. And then here I will call like loading indicator dot hide. This is the first step. This code tab from RxJS operators. And then the next thing is I need to set the items, right? Set items. In order to do that, I can use map. Then value set items of value. Okay, I can do this or to shorten things, all map of set item. This will work absolutely fine. And then there is some catch error, right? So in order to use error stuff, we might need to use something called catch error. Then there is some error. And then let me do one thing. Let me do these two things on error object. What are the things being done? Up notification dot show error and stuff, right? So this is error object. And then one more thing is required because there is an error. You need to throw it. Throw. So yes, almost done. having these things in what's that, in three different things, it doesn't make much sense, right? So what we can do is I will create a variable here, and then throw like this. Then do this. Then let me create a function for this. Or handle reactive error. As of now, I couldn't able to find anything else. Let me remove this message. Let me remove this bracket. And then we are done, right? So I need, in order to because each and everything, as you said, it was publisher and subscriber thing. So if you want to use a certain thing like this, I need to subscribe it. Yeah, what I will do is we'll call something called subscription to item $dot subscribe. Then when I am returning it, I need to unsubscribe actually the component has been unloaded. In that case, unsubscribe, because the use effect will always utilize these things. And then fortunately we don't need on received data, we don't need on error, this we don't need fetch, and then we have these items, and then we have the error, set items, all the stuff. Then we have something called handle reactive error. We don't want to have this here, we will just move it into a global function, as we might be using it often. Okay, and then let's see whether application is running or not. Running. Okay, so in this case, for the first thing we have done, right, instead of doing all the receive, fetch, and all the stuff, we are just moved into simple three-liner things with the help of RxJS extensions. What else is there? There is one more thing, which is like book for, which has been called once the button has been clicked. The idea there is the book for button will be clicked for each and everything. For example, in this case, reactive app, it is for here, 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 and all the stuff being clicked. What we will do here is to make it more reactive. I don't need this. I don't need this click event. So rather than that, I will have something called, whenever there is a button has been clicked, I would like to do something. So what I'll do is I will add a reference thing like button container. Okay. I will initialize this button container equal to use ref of. Okay, so what a use ref will do is it will add a reference for the DOM variables, whatever which we have. In this case, we are going to have a reference for this button container. And then what I'm going to do is I'll find out, I need to attach a click event. Okay, if I want, whenever something is being clicked within the div, I need to do something. So for that, what I will do is I will add something like button click events. Let's create something. and then I'll use something like from event, which is also a ArcJS stuff. Then I will use our button container dot current, and then along with that I need to specify what is the event which I want to listen. So I'm using click questions, that thing. Now what it will happen is whenever any click event is going to happen underneath button container, we will be receiving it. Okay. And then as usual we will start doing pipes. So we need to find out whether it has been clicked on a button or clicked on something else. Okay, so that is the first thing. So how can we do that? We can have a tag, right? You can have an attribute data, because I believe we need this value, right? The item we need. If you see here, what all the things we need is item.id, item.name, and choose slot and all the stuff. Instead of, what I will do is I have something like data URL. So whenever data URL is the attribute which will contain where the history needs to go. Okay. So whenever anything is being clicked, if it has a data URL, we need to go to that particular data URL. That is what the idea here is. What we'll do is we'll have a pipe, and then as usual we will do something like filter. We will have a element, right? Event dot target. Okay, so these are all typical JavaScript. It doesn't have much stuff. As attribute data URL. Then if we have this value, I need to fetch only that value. I don't need any other value. What I will do is have a map, again event, then get attribute data URL. So I have got the data URL. Now I just need to call that one. Okay, so what I'll do is tap URL data URL history dot push data. Okay, so I am listening to the click events, and then I am filtering with the event has an attribute data URL, and then I am mapping the data URL. I am just trying to get it out, and then I am calling the history.push. So what it will give me is, I don't need this method, and we need to subscribe this one as well, right? Button click event. So either we can create another subscription and then we can do another subscribe, or there is one more beautiful option which I will always go for. Combine latest items dollar button click events subscribe. Sorry, I need to add one more thing, which is whenever if I use combine latest, I need to put it into array. Combine latest is not defined. Why is that? I have used combine credit. Not imported. So okay, I will import it. Array source. Since fine, it is working fine. Okay, so whenever if you have multiple events for you, you can always use combine latest. there are multiple way combine letters can be used. I think it was out of scope. We discussed that in a separate topic. But in this case, combine letters is for combining multiple streams, and then just have a single subscription, and then you can unsubscribe it. Fine. So we have two things, and let's see whether it's going to work. Or if I'm going to click it, it needs to go to the next page. It's going. It's working. Okay. I think we are well so much aware of time. I think we have almost got 1 hour 20 minutes, I guess. We can do that similarly for our choose slot as well, but time is getting out. I guess I will stop here. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer, or else just put it into comments or uh, connect with me. My as that is that connect with me in LinkedIn or Twitter or GitHub. Muthu is here. Okay, so you cannot connect with GitHub, but yeah, you can connect with Twitter or LinkedIn. Muthu is here. I'd be happy to answer your question if you have any. This brings to the end of the session. So thank you.